She put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations.
Conviction rate aside, only 45 people were sentenced to state prison for marijuana conviction during Harris's 7 years in office.
What we really need is a phenomenon.
I think she was a DEI hire.
Can the coconut tree vice president Kamala Harris be trusted? Are the Dems asking you to forgive and forget a G-side?
But that little old man is an APAC baby who spent the last 9 months blowing toddlers to smithereens. We have watched an entire Democratic Party, including Miss Cackle, Silk Press, Coconut Tree, cover for this guy.
A war on drugs?
Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president. But she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations.
And an overall failing to uphold the promises that the Biden administration were built on. Today, in a rare occurrence of internet nuance, we are just going to discuss the facts. Not because I'm encouraging you to support, campaign for, or even vote for Vice President Kamala Harris, but because, as always, I am encouraging you to think for yourself using firsthand sources. What I am is pissed off that as an artist who should just be making art, which of course that can be political and my stance about things does matter because the public supports me, but I should not be here doing reporter work for you. But you guys are so mean and aggressive and you refuse to look at information for yourself that, okay, I'll Google for you. Oh, I have never been the one to tell you to trust the government or even politicians in general blindly, but I'm also not one for the regurgitation of propaganda to promote a very specific idea. In my head, even when the side that I support is spreading propaganda, it pisses me off because today it's in your favor, but tomorrow it won't be. I've said so many times, this is how G-sides occur. This is how the oppression of people occur, is the manipulation of language and the loss of real information. And for the love of God, I just want you to take yourself out of this really weird internet bubble where everyone just says trigger words that make you so emotional and so energetic that your brain turns off and you just internalize the messages that you are presented. Social media people are people with agendas. They don't really give an F about your well-being. They give an F about their brand, their virality, their ability to make money. And for the love of God, I just need you guys to see that instead of just repeating what they say, but people just eat it up. And so today, I just want to lay some facts on the table because if I hear certain things one more time, I'm just going to lose it. Because the reality is this: there are very valid concerns and criticisms of Vice President Kamala Harris, and then there are some that are just like actually BS created by the right to damage the blue campaign, but also just to disparage Black women.
I think she was a DEI hire, and I think that that's what we're seeing, and I just don't think that they have anybody else. I just think that they're in real disarray.
And the idea that they could run for office in general. And we're just going to discuss all of it. Well, not all of it. That's the other part. Like, I don't want to see, well, what about this and what about that? And this isn't a complete statement and there's all this other stuff. Babe, I'm not spending that kind of time on researching every itty bitty thing that she has done or not done. We're just going to talk about the key points that you guys keep using as an excuse to verbally abuse me on TikTok and Instagram because I want you to shut the F up, quite frankly. Okay? And if you're new to this channel and you're new to me and your interest is political commentary, you definitely don't have to subscribe because I'm not necessarily a political commentary person. I talk a lot about social issues between the people in the community and ways that we can make change and ways that we can push against the culture of oppression as it relates to the art that I create, which is about the liberation of women. If you're interested in those topics and you like books, prose, essays, and music on that topic, yeah, totally tap in, subscribe. I'd love to have you. Additionally, in alignment with my goal to present a nuanced and factual context to the conversations happening on the internet about this presidential race, I will be showing clips of other content creators, their commentary, some that I agree with, some that I'm presenting just to show the different types of discourse that is going on, the sentiments, the emotions. I do not own any of those videos, and if anybody wants me to take out their clip portion, I will cite them below with links to their platforms, but I am including them because a lot of this conversation is a criticism and a dissection of the types of conversations that are going on in social media spaces, and I am one voice, and I just wanted to show this is what I am observing. It is very hard to know where to start first, but I think the first place I want to arrive at is Kamala Harris's war on drugs. This notion that Kamala Harris imprisoned over 1,500 Black men on trumped up charges of marijuana which actually has been debunked, guys. I said this in the comment section and people took that as being pro Kamala. I was like, it's not really pro or con. It's just factually true that that has been debunked. And the source of that propaganda information has been cited, where it came from, and where this misunderstanding or purposeful misunderstanding of what she did in her career as a prosecutor, where that came from. So of course I will, because nobody can Google for themselves because everybody claimed that, oh, I never heard that it was debunked. I will cite the articles that I am referencing below. If you have firsthand sources that are not so-and-so from Twitter that you like a lot, you may also drop those below for further context.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context.
Because again, guys, it's not about erasure, ignoring, or any of those other terms. It's about let's just get the freaking facts straight. And propaganda hurts everybody. This article, which was written by Vox, published on August the 12th, 2020, Kamala Harris's controversial record on criminal justice explained. Here, the article moves through Kamala's stance as a self-professed reformer, and the fact that a lot of people disagreed, and that a lot of this came down to the fact that she did have a historical run and win when she was elected to office as a prosecutor, and that she had to walk a little bit of a tight line that was considered balancing in some sense, where she did things like, and I quote, she refused to pursue the death penalty against the man who killed a police officer, but also defended California's death penalty system in court. She implemented training programs to address police officer racial biases, but also resisted calls to her office to investigate certain police shootings. An article published by the Mercury News called Campaign Fact Check, Here's How Kamala Harris Really Prosecuted Marijuana Cases, published on September 11, 2019, updated on July 23, 2024, said that Harris oversaw more than 1,900 marijuana convictions in San Francisco. Previously unreported records from the DA's office show her persecutors appear to have convicted people on marijuana charges at a higher rate than under her predecessor based on data about the marijuana arrests in the city. But former lawyers in Harris's office and defense attorneys who worked on drug cases say most defendants arrested for low-level pot possession were never locked up, and only a few dozen were sent to state prison for marijuana conviction under Harris's tenure. There's no way that anyone could say that she was a draconian in her pursuit of marijuana cases, says Nikki Solis, a high-ranking attorney in San Francisco. The Mercury News article goes on to say, during the last presidential debate in July, Rep. Tulsi Gabbard blasted Harris over marijuana convictions, saying that she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations, and then laughed and asked if she ever smoked marijuana. Gabbard was misleadingly citing figures for all of California while Harris was Attorney General, even though the vast majority of marijuana cases in the state are persecuted by independently elected county district attorneys. A San Francisco DA from 2004 through 2010, however, Harris had wide latitude to decide which marijuana cases to persecute and what sentences to seek in the city. She took office after defeating the legendary liberal District Attorney Terrence Hallinan. During her campaign, Harris criticized him over his office's low conviction rate and vowed to run a dictatorship, although she mostly focused her rhetoric on violent crime. Both candidates supported medical marijuana, which was already legal in California. Over Harris's 7 years as top persecutor, her attorneys won 1,956 misdemeanors and felony convictions for marijuana possession, cultivation, or sale, according to data from the DA's office. That includes people who were convicted of marijuana offenses and more serious crimes at the time. Conviction rate aside, only 45 people were sentenced to state prison for marijuana conviction during Harris's 7 years in office, compared to the 135 people during her predecessor's 8 years, according to data from the State Corrections Department. And again, that's not to say that none of her work as a middle-of-the-aisle persecutor could not have been better and that cannot be criticized, but that is to say that there is a lot of BS out there about what she actually did and why. Now on to maybe the most pressing concern regarding a Kamala Harris presidency. Where does she stand on the issues in Gaza? I have here an article by Time called How U.S. Policy on Gaza Could Change Under Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. Before I get into that, I will say I am personally a little hesitant to project the ideals of the Biden administration onto Kamala as a candidate, because the truth of the matter is the role of the vice president is to back the president. And a lot of times there is not any room, I won't even say some, there is likely zero room for a sitting vice president to publicly disagree with a president unless it is a part of the political agenda strategy, good cop, bad cop. That's all I will say, is that I would be hesitant to, I would be hesitant. Anybody who's ever had a job that did things they didn't agree with kind of understands the sentiment. Like the story I told on TikTok about when my PR company ran an ad that I felt was offensive to Black women, but they did not listen to my input at all. They just did what they were going to do, but I was still on the team, name still on the paper. But I digress. Getting into the Time article, it says, compared to Biden, who is regarded as perhaps the most pro-Israel president in American history, Harris does not have the same deep-seated affinity for Israel, nor does she seemingly share Biden's long-standing, if at times fractious, relationship with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin N. Harris, in an apparent snub, has opted out of presiding over the Israeli premier's contentious address to Congress this week. She is, however, expected to meet with him privately at another point during the visit. The vice president has proven herself to be attuned to the concerns of Democratic voters who are increasingly perturbed by the immense suffering taking place in Gaza as a result of the Israeli bombardment backed and funded by the U.S. She was the first senior administration official to call for immediate ceasefire in Gaza and openly took the Israeli government to task for not doing enough to ease humanitarian catastrophe, lamenting that too many innocent Palestinians have died. While Biden did eventually come around to those positions, Harris was seen to do so first and more forcefully. But the article does go on to say that, but still, observers warn that the rhetoric differences between Harris and Biden don't necessarily presage major policy deviation. Harris, like Biden, has repeatedly pledged support for Israel's security and self-defense. She has also dismissed calls for her fellow lawmakers to introduce conditions on the aid to Israel in line with U.S. law. There is a well-established Democratic establishment consensus on Israel-Palestine, and I don't expect Harris to break out of it and go in a more progressive side of the party, says H.A. Heller. At the same time, Biden held a particularly hard line when it came to supporting Israel. Harris won't need to hold to that in order to keep the party together. In a similar grain, there's an article by Politico that basically says that Harris has been more critical, but we don't know that she will take different actions, essentially. But as many online have chimed in, that does not mean that Kamala Harris is without complete criticism, and it does not mean that she's not complicit in the work that the Biden administration has done. But I think the other side of that people are asking for consideration on is that a lot of people are taking very valid concerns and spitting them into what is very much racist and sexist rhetoric, attacking her ability to lead as a woman and a person of color. There have already been crusades online about her former romantic partners suggesting that she slept her way to the top. There have been commentary on the fact that her great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was a slaver. Mine too, probably. And of course, this big fear of Trump really just taking it to the wall if he gets back in line, in this idea that, like, yo, we don't necessarily think that Kamala's gonna spearhead radical change, but we do think she is easier to respectfully keep a leash on as the people than Trump is, who is very pro demolition of all democracy, very pro racism, very pro all the bad stuff. But that said, I don't necessarily think it's fair to ask voters to pick the lesser of two evils. But here is the real reality that I think really pisses me off, that a lot of people out there don't understand. That is the reality that in which we live. Your argument sounds a lot like, oh, if you're anti-capitalism, why do you go to work every day? Why do you pay for your groceries? Why don't you just grow it in your backyard, right? Like, there's such little nuance on understanding on what democracy is, what American democracy was built on, why we have a 3-branch system, how that operates. And the truth of the matter is, yes, the system has to be overhauled for that to change. But if you are not actively moving as an insurrectionist, commenting in my comment section is not the action that's going to overhaul the system, baby.
What's weird to me is when the internet gets on and gets mad at someone for saying something they don't like, and then they come back with a video being like, oh yeah, that was wrong. I'm sorry about that. Like, I get it. And the comments are always like, oh, the switch up, the switch up. What did you want them to do?
That's because the majority of people who engage in and cancel culture, mob mentality, whatever we'd like to call it, behavior, don't actually care about making progress, educating, or changing behavior. They care about screaming into echo chambers of people who already agree with them whilst framing their opinions and ideas as revolutionary and going against the grain, despite saying the most often promoted and softest opinions imaginable, and getting to enact their fantasies of being powerful by coming together to bring somebody else down. If you create a society that does not allow or foster redemption, if you will be shunned for mistakes and cruelty that, while obviously aren't favorable, haven't caused irreversible and insurmountable damage, then there is much less of an incentive to grow and change. If you create a society that does not allow or foster redemption, if you will be shunned for mistakes and cruelties that, while obviously aren't favorable, haven't caused irreversible and insurmountable damage, then even the best, purest of you will eventually end up on the chopping block. Remember that a lot of perspectives that are second nature to us today weren't second nature even 5 years ago, and 5 years before that would take you to a world you wouldn't even recognize. And that world shaped and molded a lot of people's perspectives, often into flawed perspectives that they could be educated out of, likely, if someone tried. Now, of course, nothing I just said matters if you don't care about progress or education, etc., but I'm just saying, every few weeks there is a tremendous opportunity for a call-in moment where the people who tout how loving and caring and inclusive and educated and educating they are could showcase that. But somehow instead, they always end up choosing
yelling at voters, being a bigot, yelling at me. And yeah, it is bigotry because I know for a fact you guys talk to me the way I do because I'm a Black woman. I've scrolled through the TikTok comment sections. I've seen how you've commented on the posts of white men, white women, even Black men who are explicitly pro Kamala. And in my video, where I did not in any terms call for forgiving, forgetting, or just picking the lesser two evils, came at me because you believe that Black women are the workhorses of social justice movements, and the idea that I might be excited about the idea that a Black woman could become president. It annoyed you because you're just ignoring. No, I'm a human being having a human reaction to something that I never thought would be possible. Hello. You're bigots. But not only that, you are cowards because you are not out there doing this work. I am out there doing this work. I have done this work for years. I've won awards for my work in the social justice sphere. And I can tell you, as somebody who has set meetings with local and regional officials to make sure that the concerns of the people that I live amongst are heard and are part of the agenda before we consent to promoting their campaigns, that I know you're not doing anything. I know you don't understand how this works. You just want to complain. You just want to be a little bitchy on the internet, which go for it, but leave me alone, quite frankly. Educate yourself. You are repeating harmful rhetoric based on misinformation because you have a lot of feelings and you haven't read anything, and you are just internalizing all this information that content creator after content creator is giving you. And then when somebody does give you a news article, you're like, well, who owns the news stations? What are they affiliated to? What are the content creators that you have plant your flag in their ass affiliated with? You have so much cognitive dissonance when you could just sit and learn and take in some information and learn how the system works so that you can decide what works the best for you when it comes to implementing change. A lot of you guys don't even know that if you are a U.S. citizen and over 18, you can run for a position as a delegate. Delegates are everyday people like you and me. I mean, a lot of times they are people from political families, but you have the same access is what I'm telling you. There's nothing stopping you from doing that if you can gather the support, the energy, and the money to run and win. The delegates are the people who pick the nominees for the parties. You need to be a part of that. I would rather you go out and do that than yell at people on the internet because this is the only way you have to achieve identity in some kind of moral superiority high ground. That is weird. You are helping no one. You are spreading misinformation. You are spreading harm. You are spreading anger and antagonism in a climate where everybody's already having a hard time. Everyone's already depressed. Everybody's already going through something. You are a troll. Just because you are a troll in the name of social justice does not mean you are not a troll. You are. But also a lot of you are liars because somebody is sharing these Kamala trends, these memes.
Well, what we really need is a feminine phenomenon. A what? A feminine phenomenon. Hit it like rum pom pom. Get it hot like Papa John. Make a bitch go on and on. It's a feminine phenomenon.
they're so viral. Millions of people are liking them, sharing them, and going off. You are enjoying this campaign, and you cannot convince me that you're not, because somebody is standing behind them.
The memification of Kamala Harris is cringe, and it is also unironically going to save whatever democracy we have left in the US. I'm seeing a decent amount of concern from leftists right now that this mass participation in the memification of Kamala indicates that there's some kind of mass anti-critical hero worship movement of Harris going on right now. And that makes sense because the only time we've seen something like this before has been from people who are anti-critical, culty hero worshippers. However, the difference between the left and the right is that we don't hero worship our politicians. The memification of Harris is actually a highly organized, impactful, and strategic guerrilla marketing strategy.
And if you're concerned that the memification of Kamala Harris is brain rot, you should really be glad, because who makes up most of America? Like, if it's able to be dumbed down to a propagandic level of femininomenon, be glad. What do you think the purpose of a slogan like "Make America Great Again" was? It's stupid and people get it.
And a lot of Gen Z is really excited, and a lot of millennials are excited. And I just want to say it's okay to be excited, but it's also okay to be afraid that you will be disappointed again, because that time and time again is what happens with American democracy. But also what happens time and time and time again is that we are delightfully surprised. Sometimes we pass laws that protect same-sex marriage. Sometimes we pass laws that support women in the autonomy of their bodies. Sometimes we pass laws that change the world. Human progress has always been a thing. It's always been hard. It's always been scary. It's always been a gamble. We've never been sure who is going to accomplish what. But I guess this brings us full circle to what I would really like to impart on you, is that when it comes to leaders, especially somebody as high up as a president, they really do exist just to be symbolic. And the leader you have in place determines what type of symbolism and sentiment trickles down to the people. And quite frankly, my personal opinion is that it's better to have a symbol of hope who disappoints us than somebody who is a symbol of oppression and hate, and that encourages those who live those lives to go out and spread more hate. I'd rather we have a symbolic figurehead who inspires people to believe that no matter what race they are, what creed they are, what gender they are, anything is possible. And so a lot of times in these elections, baby, the unfortunate truth is that you are voting for symbolism. If you're not ready to be an insurrectionist that dismantles the systems and starts a civil war, then you either just don't participate or you vote for the best symbol for the country. And that's all I've got. If you enjoyed this, cool, like it, share it, subscribe, especially tag your friends who are addicted to misinformation trauma. If you don't like it, I don't care. So that's how we fix that.